President Biden talks Ukraine with the UK's Prime Minister, and Ohio makes a bid to host Space Command headquarters. All of that and more today, June 9th, 2023. Good morning, Early Birds. I'm Jonathan Lehrfeld, and this is the Early Bird Brief, produced by Defense News and Military Times. First up, President Joe Biden and British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak met at the White House yesterday to discuss a variety of defense and diplomatic issues. Among them, Ukraine's efforts to fight Russia and clean energy cooperation. The leaders said they came to an agreement on a new Atlantic Declaration. That will be a framework to increase cooperation between the two countries on a variety of issues, from clean energy transition to development of emerging technologies, as well as protecting technology critical to national security.
We discussed how we can continue to adapt and upgrade our partnership to ensure our countries remain at the cutting edge of a rapidly changing world.
The leaders also discussed China, economic security, and more. Biden and Sunak have had 4 face-to-face meetings since Sunak became Prime Minister in October, but this is Sunak's first visit to Washington as Prime Minister. The 15-month-old Russian invasion of Ukraine was high on the two leaders' agenda. The US and UK are the two biggest donors to the Ukraine war effort. Each play a central role in long-term efforts to train and eventually equip Ukrainian pilots on F-16 fighter jets. Biden reiterated confidence that Congress would continue to provide Ukraine funding as needed.
I believe we'll have the funding necessary to support Ukraine as long as it takes. And I believe that that support will be real, even though you hear some voices today on Capitol Hill about whether or not we should continue to support Ukraine and for how long we should support them.
Sunak also wanted to make the case for a UK official to replace outgoing NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. Sunak wants Defense Minister Ben Wallace to succeed Stoltenberg, who is set to end his term leading the alliance in September. NATO leaders are set to gather in Lithuania on July 11th through 12th for an annual summit. Another important story: Ohio wants to blast past Alabama and Colorado in the race for Space Command headquarters. Ohio lawmakers made a wildcard pitch to convince the Biden administration and Pentagon to put the Space Command headquarters in the Buckeye State. Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown sent a letter asking the Biden administration to place the headquarters at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base outside Dayton. 5 Ohio House Democrats and 2 House Republicans signed the letter. The letter touted the Air Force and NASA installations that Ohio already hosts. These include the National Air and Space Intelligence Center, the National Space Intelligence Center, and the Air Force Research Laboratory. The Air Force announced in January 2021 that it would move Space Command's current headquarters from Colorado Springs to Huntsville, Alabama. Huntsville is home to the Army's Redstone Arsenal and the Missile Defense Agency. Colorado Springs, on the other hand, is home to the Air Force Academy and the temporary Space Command headquarters. Colorado's congressional delegation was infuriated by the announcement and then asked the Air Force to review the decision. Several Colorado Democrats argued it was an act of retaliation because Biden won the state in the 2020 election. The Defense Department Inspector General released a report in May of last year that found the Air Force followed all relevant laws and policies when selecting Huntsville. However, the report also found the rules themselves may have been flawed. And a separate report from the Government Accountability Office, released in June 2022, found the Air Force did not follow best practices when making the basing decision. Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall is reviewing all the findings, but a final basing decision for Space Command headquarters is long overdue. In other news, Marine Corps officials gave an update on drone and ship needs for amphibious operations. For more on this, Defense News naval warfare reporter Megan Eckstein breaks it all down for us.
Well, Megan, thank you for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you interviewed some folks about drone and ship needs for amphibious operations. What are officials telling you that their needs are?
Yeah, the Marine Corps is taking a look at its future operating concepts as part of this Force Design 2030 effort, looking at how they want to operate in the future. And obviously, amphibious operations are a big part of that. So today, the Marines have these big amphibious ships that they get to operate out of. They can haul a lot of things. Today, it hauls around Marines and their weapons and their connector vehicles. But they're looking at sort of a mothership concept for the future is one of the big new ideas. Could these amphibious ships serve as a mothership for unmanned aerial vehicles, unmanned surface vessels, unmanned under-the-sea vessels, and really just use the space that they have on the big amphibious ships to bring new capabilities into the war fight? The idea is that these ships conceal whatever they're holding inside of them. And so, if the adversary saw an amphibious ship on its way to a certain location, they wouldn't know, is it just a group of Marines inside? Is it a bunch of drones? Is it anti-ship missiles? And so the ships really provide an element of surprise. And the Marines want to see, what new technologies they can pack inside the ships.
But there's a study underway that will affect what kind of ships the Navy will buy, right? What's the status of that study?
Yeah, in the near term, the Marines, the Navy, and the Pentagon are a little bit out of sync right now in terms of what the amphibious fleet should look like. The Marines are really firm that they need 31 ships, and they really like the current capability they get with the San Antonio class amphib. However, for the Navy and for the Pentagon, it's really hard to squeeze these ships into an already very full shipbuilding budget. And so there's just this tension over the need for the ship versus the cost of the ship. And so the study that's ongoing and actually due any day now is looking at not only what capabilities should the amphibious ships have, but is there a different way to scale down the capabilities on board? Is there a different way to buy them? Is there a different way to construct them at the shipyard so that you reduce cost a little bit? So the Marines have pushed back on this before. They have said that they need today's design, they need to buy one every other year, and they don't want to give up any capability. But ultimately, it will be the Pentagon's decision to take the results of this study that are due anytime now and create a plan forward. So we don't know anything just yet, but I expect in the coming weeks we'll find out a little bit more about where this is going.
Well, Megan Eckstein, Naval Warfare Reporter Extraordinaire, thank you for joining us on the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, Megan. For more conversations like that one, please like and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Also on the radar for today, the police officer who responded to an attack at a congressman's office in Virginia is a Marine veteran. Former Marine Staff Sergeant James Lewis is now a master police officer with the City of Fairfax Police Department. He was on patrol on May 15th when he heard about an incident at Virginia Representative Jerry Connolly's office over the radio. Lewis told Marine Corps Times in an interview that he responded after he realized he was just a few blocks away. Police say a man hit two of the congressman's staffers with an aluminum baseball bat. Officers arrived about 5 minutes after the call about the attack and detained him. Lewis served as an active duty Marine from 2005 to 2013, according to service records. Afterward, he served in the Marine Reserve. And now, here are some other stories that we're hearing chirps about. Arlington National Cemetery will delay the return of the horses that help transport fallen service members to their final resting places while their health is still being assessed. Rescues are underway in Ukraine after a dam collapsed in the southern part of the country. Authorities are rushing to save people stranded on rooftops and to supply drinking water to those in flooded areas. USA Today is reporting that the number of soldiers who die by suicide in Alaska is decreasing. According to the report, Army officials attribute that to the service's efforts to improve living conditions and to bolster access to mental health services. And according to military.com, recruiting data indicates that the Army Green Berets have struggled to meet recruiting goals since 2018. And on this day in history, in 1959, the first nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarine was launched at Groton, Connecticut. The USS George Washington was commissioned into service a few months later, in December 1959. The USS George Washington had her nuclear capability removed in the early 1980s and was reclassified as an attack submarine. It was decommissioned several years later. That's it for us this morning. To get more of the top stories and breaking news, go to defensenews.com/EBB to subscribe to the Early Bird Brief newsletter. If you liked what you heard, give us a like wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to follow us on social media at @defense_news and @military times. Also, please rate us and be sure to leave a comment. The Early Bird Brief is hosted by me, Jonathan Lerfeld, and produced by Simone Z. Perez. Today's episode features stories by the Associated Press, Bryant Harris, Megan Eckstein, and Irene Lowenson. Our editor-in-chief is Mike Gruss. Have a great day.